Welcome to Unscripted, where the story behind the journey matters most, where we don't just talk about technology, markets, or headlines. We humanize the people behind them. I'm your host, Leslie Mota, and this show is sponsored by WACME. Tonight is about conviction, the kind that keeps someone showing up year after year in an industry that tests people constantly. It's about belief, not just in technology, but in community, purpose, and building something that lasts beyond hype, cycles, and temporary narratives. Because some people enter the space chasing trends, and others dedicate years of their life to helping protect, grow, and defend what they believe matters. Through criticism, volatility, market crashes, and constant noise, they stay grounded in the mission. Tonight's guest represents the grassroots heart of crypto, someone who didn't come from coding or flashy marketing, but from real world experience, relationship building, and genuine community leadership. A man deeply rooted in faith, family, and service, who has spent years helping drive adoption, partnerships, and awareness for one of the most battle tested networks in the industry. From organizing events and strengthening community to helping navigate some of the toughest moments in crypto, he's become a respected voice for resilience, transparency, and long term conviction in this space. And tonight, we go beyond the charts and headlines into the human side of the journey, the lessons learned through years in crypto, and the purpose that continues to drive him forward. Tonight, we go unscripted with David Schwartz, Director Projects and Strategic Partnerships with Litecoin Foundation. Welcome, David. How are you today?
Good. How you doing?
I am doing great. First of all, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It is such a pleasure to have you.
I appreciate the invite. And you know that music you got in the background while I'm waiting was slapping. Was that
You
like
like it?
was that black violin or what was that?
It's like these violins that I found when I was looking on YouTube Music for some music to be in the intro, and I was like, I liked it. I like violin music. It's
Yeah,
classical.
it's amazing. I love violin. I saw black violin when I was at Stuttgart at
Really?
US European Command. They came and played at the gymnasium there, and it was amazing. So from that point on, I was a fan of theirs. It sounds a lot like their music. So
Yes, I like it because it has like that little twist of hip hop, but still you can hear the strings. I used to play the violin when I was in high
really,
school. Yeah. And then I used to go to church and we used to have this mariachi, Christian mariachi Jewish. Uh yeah, it's a lot. And I used to play the violin there too.
that's cool. That's really cool. So we're
But
learning more about you than me tonight. That's awesome.
no, David, we're going to turn it back to you because
Okay.
you have a very interesting journey, and I think what stands out the most about your journey is that it was never really just about crypto. It was about the people, the conviction, the purpose. This space, can harden people, and it could have us pulling our hair out, bald spots and all, but it can make people cynical, reactive. We've seen it on the timeline and very transactional. But then every once in a while, you meet someone who still leads with heart, who still believes community matters, who still shows up because they genuinely care about what they're building, the people in the space, and the people around them. And I think that's why your story resonates with so many people. I know, at least for me, it resonates with me. So what I want to know is, like, before the conferences, before the foundation, before crypto became your full-time life, who are
Mhm.
you at your core? Who is David at his core, and what parts of that person have remained unchanged through all these years in this industry? Because this industry can change you.
Yeah, I would say to begin with, there has been some change in me. I've obviously when you get hurt enough, or if you have enough friction against your body, you end up you know growing some calluses and stuff. And there's some parts where I've probably become more callous than I ever was before
Yeah.
I came into crypto. It introduced me to a lot of things that I'd never had to deal with before in my life. And I would like to think that most of it I probably responded in an appropriate way, and
Hmm.
the way that I felt was most responsible and respectful. But like anything, times when you end up kind of, you probably wish you could have taken something back and done it a little bit differently too. Um,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Now,
I think for me personally, is one of the things that I'd always like to try and keep is just remembering that everybody's, a human being. They're all loved. They all came from somewhere, and they have a lot more going on in their life than just whatever's happening on the screen or whatever they're typing, or you know what I mean. And sometimes it's hard to remember, but that's really sort of the compass I try to use anyway.
I love that. I love that because, sometimes we never know what that person is going through, especially when
Mm.
they decide to post something anger. Is it really me or is it really them?
Yeah.
But I want to talk about, when you were growing up, what kind of values were you raised? What kind of values were you raised with growing up? And how have those helped shape the way that you move through this crazy space?
Yeah, so I grew up in Wisconsin, near Madison. The funny thing about Madison is, as soon as you leave the city limits, it's just literally farms everywhere, and America's Dairyland is not an exaggeration. So literally, like, easily half my class was people that were living on farms, or they had
Wow.
some sort of manual labor upbringing, either their parents or what they were doing, and so it was very blue collar, very middle, middle income, some variance either way, but nothing really, nobody where they were making lots of money. So everybody was really just trying to plug away at life.
Mm-hmm.
And my family wasn't any different. My dad was the oldest of 12 that was from a farm that was probably 30 minutes from where I grew up. And we would visit that very often, and he would hold down 3 jobs to make sure that we were taken care of. And my mom, stayed at home and raised us 4 kids. I was in the middle, so I sort of have a little bit of that middle kid syndrome too in me sometimes.
Yeah.
Depending on if you're a middle kid or not, you probably understand what I'm talking about. But it's really like you have to share attention, you have to share resources, you have to share everything pretty much, right? Like, you're getting hand-me-downs. So I was getting my brother's clothes. Like, there was no free lunch, there was no getting spoiled, there was none of that stuff. And but they grew up in a time, my parents did, where like going to college wasn't like the only answer to getting, quote unquote, a better life or anything, right? A better life could be
Yeah.
had just, by family too. So
Hmm.
I think all those things resonated with me throughout my time as a child. Came from a faith-based background too. I was raised Catholic, and did all the things that a good little Catholic boy does. So I was an altar boy and did all those things. And unfortunately, when I got older, you go through that time period where you get unhappy with your parents. That's just what teenagers do, most of them,
Hmm.
to some degree. And I tried to pick a college that was far enough away where I didn't have to live at home, but I wasn't I wasn't really fully, like, mature enough to be on my own in that way. And I realized fairly early on, with about 3 semesters, that if I kept doing what I was doing, I probably wouldn't end up graduating. I'd just be going back home and trying to figure out how to start over again, and that's not what I wanted either. So I ended up joining the military, and that's where I got a lot of my discipline and a lot of my focus, a lot of the
Hmm.
other things that have really been ingrained into my normal daily life. Plus, marrying a German woman, that really did it too.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
you got to be on your P's and Q's. So between the military and her, that's where a lot of the drive and a lot of the other determination stuff comes from, and not having really any excuses for anything that happens. You just own it, you figure out how to fix it, and you move on. So,
So you got shaped up real quick, David.
yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, and I literally met her like after I quit college and I went into the military. Like, within 5 days of my first duty station, I met her, and
And that was it for
that
you.
was it. I wanted to ask her to marry me after 2 weeks, but I didn't want to scare her, so I waited 5, and then I asked her.
That is freaking awesome. And here you
Yeah,
are, it's like you've been married for so long and have a beautiful family.
Yeah, 35 years in December coming up. So yeah.
It's like, so if people don't believe love at first sight, it does exist. David's a product of it.
Yeah, sure enough.
David, was there a defining moment in your life before crypto that quietly prepared you for the highs and lows you would later face in this industry?
Yeah, I would have to say that was in the military.
Yeah.
Also, you, it's really interesting. Like I said, I grew up in the same home. My parents still live in the same home I grew up in. So it's like there's a line of consistency there, expectation that, it's just always kind of there, right?
Yeah.
In the military, it was very temporary. Assignments were anywhere from probably 2 years to 4 years, depending on, where you were
Mhm.
going and stuff. And that usually was the time frame of friendships and trusting other people too. Was it's everything was temporary. And so even when you would leave a duty station, it doesn't mean that friendship was going to last beyond whoever was leaving, whether it was you or the other person.
Mhm.
And you find out pretty early on that it's very cutthroat sometimes too,
Oh, yeah.
because you are competing for positions and rank and things like that. And if someone feels they can get an edge on you and still smile in your face, they'll do it. And so there were times when sometimes I felt really kind of betrayed. I'm pretty trusting for the most part. I mean, Charlie's even told me I can be way too trusting sometimes. And I don't look at that as a fault. I look at it as something I'm proud of. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But it also hurts then when I find out it's not that way too. So the crypto space is very much very temporary. Lots of temporary residents, lots of people who speak a good game, and it's just not really, it's just not really there. I've learned that most of the time, the people that are very quiet and sit in the back of the room and just, kind of pound away at whatever they're doing. And when their opportunity comes to speak, they'll speak, but they're not the ones fighting to get to the front where, everybody's screaming at each other, trying to get each other's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very cutthroat space. I think this space teaches you, especially when you're trustworthy. When I was younger, somebody used to always say, trust until they give you a reason not to. But in this
Yeah.
space, it's like, let them give you a reason to trust.
It's the opposite. And I had to learn that. And it's not to be mean to anybody or
Yeah.
not to, cheapen whatever they're saying. It's like you have to be that careful with who you're
Mhm.
speaking to and what you're trying to, maybe create a partnership for or whatever else, because ultimately nobody's coming to you because they want to help you. They're coming to you to help themselves. And so as long as you can frame that and understand what that means, and are
Yes.
you are you enabling something that's good, or are you enabling something that's not good? That really just ends up being the part you need to focus on, not the fact someone's trying to use you for something. Because ultimately, if you think about it, that's business. Business is literally like you're trying to find where you can get something out of something else,
Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
unfortunately, that's why business, I mean, it really wears me out sometimes. I've had burnouts over the last 8 whatever years I've been with the foundation over that type of truth. And every now and then I have some great people that in the background are there to help me re-energize. And a lot of them are Litecoin community people, and they're just so wonderful and so supportive. And they just give you that extra, juice that you need to remember why you're here in the first place.
You talk about burnout, and this space is one of those spaces that it does take. And you did state earlier, it's like a lot of people are out for themselves. And you do, when you have a giving heart and when you're a giver and you're kind and you want to help and you want to give, there's takers. And sometimes that's such a bad combination, and then you give, and then sometimes
Mm.
it's like when you become invaluable, you become disposable, and that's can lead to a lot of burnout as well, when you're trying to grow in this space. Like, how, when you felt those burnouts, how do you get out of it? What keeps you motivated and what keeps you going forward, where there are times where it's like, what, I'm throwing in the towel and I'm getting out of here.
I definitely believe it's it's pretty much threefold. The most important part would be my wife. She's very down to earth and very supportive. And
Mhm.
even though she's not like heavy into crypto, like, I gave her some so she can understand it and learn about it, and she holds some, and stuff like that. It's not really like her deep dive or her hobby or any of that kind of stuff. She's into other things, right? But she's always there for me regardless, through this whole thing. I think the second one would be, the folks at the foundation, and Charlie himself has been a great supporter of me personally and professionally. Him and Alan and, Jay and the rest of the guys, they're just very supportive, and they're all going through the same thing I am, right? So it's like we
Mhm.
take almost turns getting burnt out and then supporting each other, right? Because
Yeah.
that, for whatever reason, sometimes the foundation can be a target for whoever's frustrated with the price, or whatever, something's going on. They put all their money into something, and so now it's not going the way they thought it would. So of course we're the easy target for a lot of that stuff, even though our main goal isn't price. Our main goal is adoption and awareness, and education and integration and stuff like that, right? And the third, it would be the community members, like I mentioned earlier. Like they're so amazing, and they're literally volunteering their time and their efforts and their talents for nothing. They're not, I mean, what they're getting in return is a lot of solid friendships, and the thing that they believe in, trying to help that for whoever comes after them, which is why I first got into it. So it's always amazing for me when I see, so many people doing things just because they really have the strong desire to do it, but they're there for me too. Like in the last few weeks here, I had a period where I was just like, what am I even doing here? And they were there for me, and they were just trying to, remind me why I came in the first place, and that I don't have to do it all alone. And that reminded me a lot of, my family background growing up, and, a lot of other things. And so that always just really touches my heart and re-energizes me.
Yeah, I think it's crucial for us to have a very strong support system, and you, especially if our main job is in this space. But you openly speak about faith in a
Mhm.
space that often avoids vulnerability. What role has faith played in helping you stay grounded through the chaos of crypto?
It's funny, I didn't even mention faith in the last three, but my faith actually is so ingrained in my normal life that I don't see it as something that I need to turn to during, you know, times of trouble. It's just something that's literally like
Mhm.
part of every day that I live and breathe. And so it's very important to me. And,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people with differing, faiths, but they still have like this commonality between them, where it's like you have something that really sort of is the nucleus behind everything for your reason to be, and the reason to be for who you are. And for me, that's obviously a Christ-centered life, and it helps me understand that everything that happens here is going to happen in some way, whether it's good or bad or whatever, but something is going to happen every day. And as long as I understand where my compass is, and why I believe in what I believe in, and how that beautiful story could be impactful for somebody else and change their life like it did mine,
Mhm.
that's worth more than any of the other stuff that I go through, good or bad, through a day.
I love that. Now, I wanted to dig into the Litecoin Foundation, and
Mhm.
for people that are not aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, I did a little research, and my understanding that Litecoin Foundation is a nonprofit
Mhm.
organization that dedicates to supporting the growth, adoption, and development of Litecoin,
Mhm.
which is one of the longest running and most battle tested cryptocurrencies in the world. And I know a lot of my peers and people watching are obsessed with Litecoin. They're like, Litecoin. So it was founded to help advance Litecoin's mission as
Mhm.
fast low cost, decentralized digital money. The foundation focuses on community building, education, partnerships, global adoption, and supporting the broader ecosystem around the network.
Hmm.
And so, for people who may not fully understand it, what exactly is the Litecoin Foundation? And can you tell us a little bit more, what led to the creation of it instead of just letting Litecoin run?
Yeah, so I mean, the foundation itself originally started as a different association, like a Litecoin association or something like that, probably a couple of years before the current foundation as you know it now. And the
Mhm.
current foundation was created around the spring of 2017 after this other association sort of like, I don't know if fails the right word or whatever, but it just didn't really come out. It didn't get off the ground the same way. But even that one wasn't started when Litecoin was actually created. It was started much later. And so to me, that's sort of a benefit to the foundation because there's obviously there's no pre-mine, there's no stash that the foundation has that it can sell off to fund operations. There's none of that. Matter of fact, it doesn't hold much of anything at all, really. Like it thrives off of donations, and so we don't have a treasury per se. We don't have any of that stuff. It's very much
Mhm.
after the same ethos as Charlie, which is like if I'm benefiting, from this because I post this or I do that or whatever, then am I really in it for the right reasons or am I just in it for me? Right. And so the foundation takes that same stance. And so like we don't make partnerships so that we can make money off of anything. Like when the price goes up, we don't make anything off of it. There's nothing connected to the foundation and price, right?
Mhm.
So what that does is it allows us to just concentrate on trying to make Litecoin as popular, as usable, as known as we can for the good of everybody. And that makes me feel good. I don't have to worry about like, are there any backdoor deals or is there anything that's shenanigan like where I'm going to feel bad when I go to sleep at night? I don't have to worry about any of that, right? I
Yeah.
literally get to do something I have a strong conviction and desire for and know that anything that I do is literally just for the betterment of the cryptocurrency Litecoin and anybody who uses it. And I think that's pretty cool. I think it's fairly unique within the space. I
Very.
know yeah, I think there's some that are like that possibly, but you would have to know that most of those are probably OG proof of work type coins. They're not going to be so much stuff that you're going to see evolving or being created within the last probably 7 or 8 years, right? Because you had a lot of that ICO stuff and other things. And I mean, VCs serve a purpose. There's like a reason for a lot of things, but if you really want to try and understand the decentralization of Litecoin and the purpose behind it, if we didn't have a foundation and a history where everything just is because of the people, not because of a pre-mine or a stash or whatever else, like everything that happens with Litecoin, literally, you could say it's basically organic because there is no large marketing fund. There is none of that stuff backing it up. It's just literally the people over time, 14 plus years, who have really had an affinity for it and want to see it do better.
14 plus years. Wow. A lot of people assume foundations control a blockchain project. Can you explain to us the difference between supporting a network versus controlling one?
Sure. Yeah. So supporting would be like even with the basic privacy that Litecoin has now through MWeb addresses, right?
Mhm.
Mimblewimble extension blocks. Those extension blocks were only available to do that through a soft fork, right? And if anybody that knows or doesn't know what a soft fork is, it's basically you're changing some of the base code to accommodate something new that doesn't cause you to do like a full, hard fork where you go off onto this new chain or anything like that. It's just changing some code. But the soft fork requires majority of the nodes to be in favor of it, right? And I can run a node, you can run a node, miners can run nodes, but anybody that's able to participate in that globally can help decide what happens, what gets added, what doesn't get added, things like that. And so, even though the idea of adding extension blocks, Mimblewimble extension blocks for Litecoin came out of the foundation had no power in actually making that come to fruition. Like, you had to go and lobby people to understand what it was, and then try and explain to them why you think this is a good thing to possibly vote yes for or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Charlie did a lot of that heavy lifting himself back in between 2019 and 2022 when this was a thing, and would go talk to the the exchanges. He'd go talk to the mining pools. He'd try and do some, like in the 2019 conference we had in Vegas. He announced that we were going to try and see if we can get MWeb added to the Litecoin code, but we couldn't do it ourselves. We couldn't control that. That's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of where the foundation was able to help bring an advancement to Litecoin, but it wasn't the one that controlled it or anything. And then, of course, we offered to have to support the dev work that would actually make it happen if it did get passed, which it did. So then the foundation helped through a bounty program where community members actually helped pay for at least half of what Dave Burkett got for even making the MWeb coding possible.
So earlier you said that, Litecoin has been around for 14 years. So it survived over a decade in an industry where we see many projects disappear over and over or within a few years. Crypto, they come and go. What, in your opinion, do you think has allowed Litecoin to remain relevant for so long?
I think a strong user base. It's got a strong history, right? So you have people today that have been using. I run into people all the time through this job where they're like, I still remember buying my first Litecoin back in like 2014 or 2013, and I used it to buy X, Y, and Z, and that's really hard to generate now from an organic standpoint with no marketing or any of that kind of stuff. It's really like something you have to like connect with, right? And most marketing obviously is to try and connect you to something emotionally so that you feel like you either have to have it or something like that, right? But at that time, it was so interesting because most of the people that were into Bitcoin actually liked Litecoin too, and so they would do both. There was nothing wrong with that. If Bitcoin was congested, they'd use Litecoin. Vice versa. It wasn't so animosity driven and tribalistic at the very beginning, and so a lot of those people they stuck around for a while, and they still have an affinity for it. And you can't necessarily duplicate that now. It's very much more market driven, very, very focused on number go up and quick turnaround on your whatever investment you're making in it, and not so much about what the tech was actually for. I think those are things that Litecoin has an advantage on some other newer projects because it comes from a time when there was still like this idealism.
Do you said something very important earlier. And do you think this is where a lot of projects may fail? And, I talk a lot about humanizing the space, getting to know the person, getting to understand them, and then, what they are building. And by finding that connection, that emotional connection, you can tap into people and whatever emotions or whatever they are going through. Do you think that a lot of projects, that's kind of where what lack that human connection, that emotional connection at times, especially if it comes to self-marketing or self-promoting, it's like they don't allow the user to really tap into who they are, what they're building, what for, and the need of it.
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to connect to a corporate sort of like marketing strategy or whatever. Like a lot of them, they try
Mhm.
and stay very highbrow, very generic in their posting. A lot very safe, right? Because they have legal teams behind them. There's a lot of things that I'm sure people would love to touch and just sort of like go off on things, and they can't, right? Like, and so it's hard for me as a person to connect with some of those because you don't feel the person in it. You just feel this shtick that's there, and it's just regurgitated by everybody who saw maybe somebody else had success with that, so they all literally will do the same thing. And so there's nothing original with that, and it's hard to connect with that because you're just seeing somebody do the same thing just with a different meme or a different whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why, even though like the over the last year and a half, the Litecoin handle has just been the most schizophrenic, weird, all over the place handle, and yet it has this following. And I don't know how many times I've talked to people in different projects, and they go, "We just love the Litecoin intern, man. This is so awesome." And like, Litecoin intern has put out some stuff that's can be very polarizing, right? And very not like, if there was a legal team, there's no way it would make it out into the public, kind of a thing. That's coming from real people. That's unfiltered. That's real people posting stuff, right? There's a group that does the posting for the intern, and some of that's kind of gotten cleaned up here lately and stuff, but that's just like, it's there. But that's why people were connecting with it so much too for that time period.
Let me tell you, it's like, because you guys have on Litecoin 1.2 million followers.
Mm.
So when I was trying to create your video, it's like I have to do research. I have to try to go as much out there and try to grab as much content as possible for those videos. So I was going through Litecoin Foundation. Oh my gosh. Some of the memes and the videos that were posted had me laughing. And I'm like, I love this account even more.
Yeah.
That's what makes it relatable. It's like whether I related to one or a couple or some, I love the one of the rooster. It reminded me of growing up and, with the roosters and the chickens singing in
Yeah.
the morning, waking us up. And then
Yeah.
the funny captions. I mean, that is what it's about. It's like, being serious, we need to be serious, but having some humor, being relatable and relating to an audience. And I think that's where some of these projects or companies may fail.
Yeah, and it's kind of like designed for them to fail at that point because like I said, they're trying. You have to try and keep a professional demeanor about it, right? And you see them sometimes, they'll try. I've seen it. Like some of them that used to be very highbrow, you never see them say anything questionable. They'll kind of like, they'll try and throw it out there a little bit now and then, just in a safe way or whatever. But it's interesting how that works or doesn't work, right? Like I don't know if you ever watched or looked at like the Ryanair X account. Like, it's hilarious because all it does is make fun of people who complain about how much leg room they don't have, or they don't have a window, or all kinds of stuff, right? I think that one's just awesome. And there's a few
Yeah.
others that are very much like that are corporate handles, and they get away with it because they understand how to do it in a way that, even though it's a weakness for their company, right? In a
Mhm.
way, because who doesn't want more leg room? Who doesn't want to have a window? And then they joke about it, like it's what, like one time there was a guy who proposed to his girlfriend on a plane, and then the Ryanair account was like, that we're gonna have to charge you an extra $50 for that, because that wasn't a part of your ticket or whatever. Just stuff like that is great because it connects you in a way. Just, we are this business. This is what we do. This is what we're good at. You should buy our thing, right? And
Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah.
It's freaking hilarious. It's like we are in an era of, having a little bit of a sense of humor and not being so uptight, especially in this phase. It's like a lot of us come from the corporate world. It's like where you do
Mm,
have to behave, and it's almost like you have to be like an ice queen or an ice
mhm,
king, and then you tap into this space and it's completely different, and then you try to adapt that in the space and sometimes it doesn't work.
mhm. Yeah, it's almost like this beautiful chaos where it works, but it's so close to the fringe of just falling apart at the same time, right? But it works. It's like I don't know how many times when I was in the military and we work with other militaries from, like, let's say France or Germany or where, someplace, right? And we'd be together and we'd have to go through a field exercise, or you'd be planning something. And the American military is very good at what it does, but it's
Mhm.
not always the best at planning things, right? Like, I remember even when I was growing up in the military, I'm like a private or an airman, and because I did both. I was in the Air Force and the Army, so I experienced it from both of those. But when you're younger and your sergeant comes to you and he goes, "Hey, we need to have this done by 5 o'clock, and you three are going to do it," and you'd be like, "Well, Sergeant, what are we supposed to do? Figure it out." And then that's your command. Go figure it out. Here's some resources. Go figure it out.
Yeah.
And these other militaries would be like, "I don't even know how you guys function," right? Because it's like there's this element of chaos or humanness that could cause it to fail, but it doesn't, right? And sometimes you just have to let people use their talents and their brains and allow them the capability to just go do something, figure it out, right? And not have everything always regimented with step 1A, B, C. If this doesn't work, you go to step this. And then, like, sometimes you just, we're humans and this is a human thing. And being on X and marketing and whatever else is very human. You're trying to relate to humans. You're not trying to relate to anybody else. Now, granted, over time, maybe we have more bots and whatever else, and that's who you're relating to.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, the whole thing was supposed to be people talking to people. You know.
I mean, at one point or another, it's like we're trying to get the bots to mimic us, but are we
Yeah.
going to mimic the bot?
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully not. Yeah.
It's wild, wild time. But talking about, the future of Litecoin, where do you see Litecoin fitting into the future of global payments and digital finance? We always talk about at one point or another, digital currency. I think that's going to happen. Some say Bitcoin, others, I don't know. But up a little bit, because one of the things that I heard is that people often hear, refer to as digital silver to
Hmm.
Bitcoin. Tell us or walk me through what that actually means in practical terms.
Sure. So, in practical terms, if you go back to civilizations that actually utilized silver and gold, gold was more for, it was for the upper class or royalty or what, like the average person didn't have gold in any capacity. I mean, you have castles or, large buildings that were painted with gold because it was a symbol of how rich you were. You could literally paint it on the pillars and the walls. And, I mean, it was just this thing that was used to show your wealth, right? And gold was used for coins, but it was so valuable that, I mean, at some point, why would you, right? If you have other metals that hold value, maybe not as much as gold, but they still hold value and they're still found worthy and they're more practical. I mean, gold is soft also, if you think about it, right? In its pure form, it's not very hard. But silver is, and silver still holds value, and it's still something that had status to it, but it was more plentiful. It was easier to use in a currency capability type of a setting. There's a lot of reasons for it, right? And so when Charlie came up with digital silver to Bitcoin's gold, or the silver to Bitcoin's gold. He was literally, that's what he's talking about. Gold would be a lot harder to use as a global currency than silver, and silver complements gold. It doesn't erase the need for gold. It doesn't change what gold is, and it allows people to do both and use them in a way that's more smart. Like if you're going to actually try and exchange your digital gold for something, you better damn well know what you're doing it for, and you're not going to probably get it back at that same price ever again. Digital silver is something where it's much more stable, doesn't rise as fast. Obviously, if you look in gold and silver now, there's the proportion between them price wise is very significant, and it's the same way with Bitcoin and Litecoin. But silver had its run too, right? But it still did everything that it did prior to its run up. Silver never changed, right? Gold never really changed either. It's just its value changed, and so that silver to gold moniker, that's still very relevant today for Litecoin. And okay. And I feel like it does yeah. So it does meet different things. So from a world view, you can look at it as digital. If people are going to look at Bitcoin as digital gold, and they do, if they listen to it long enough, I suppose they do. And then you have the same thing for silver. At some point, people are never satisfied with one thing. Never, right? Like, even if you're happily married or something like that, if something draws your attention and you go, that's a good looking person, whether it doesn't change the fact that you are going away from your husband or your wife or whatever else, you just notice something, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. And some people decide to go do something else. They don't stick with what they already have, but some people do. But the idea that someone is like, when you marry somebody, like for 60 years, you're never going to be unhappy or wonder what you were doing, or there's never going to be any friction, or you're never going to have to try and reconcile something or whatever, is a lie. And so people naturally want options. That's just the way it is. With money, we want options. With clothes, we want options. With how people drive is like, Americans are crazy. So we're the only ones who basically use feet and inches and whatever else, right? We want options. We don't want to be like everybody else, right? There's all these different things. So why would money be any different? And if you're going to force everybody to have one type of money, then it's no longer freedom money, and it's no longer money for you and me. It's money that somebody else has some sort of control over, and they're the beneficiaries of it, right? Which is why people are against fiat to begin with. It's because it's generated with that understanding in mind. And so that was why everybody got so far, they got behind Bitcoin from the very beginning, and other cryptos like Litecoin later on, is because they wanted that option to not be controlled in that way anymore, and at least have some sort of outlet that was outside of the traditional financial system. So for anybody to come now at some point and say Bitcoin is the standard for everything, there is no other options, you're just falling under the same exact thing that you thought was oppressing you before, right? So you need to have options. People should have options. And whether it's of a lesser value, but still does things better than this one, is just part of that, right? So if Bitcoin is hyper value, like it's up near $1 million or whatever in value, let's say hypothetically, and Litecoin stays around, maybe it's at $100 or $1,000 or whatever. It's nothing near where this is at, but the practicality of it is so much better than trying to use this one to do something simple. Why wouldn't you use this one, right? Like, that time will come where people have to make a choice that's so practical in nature they can't avoid whatever's going on with price, because that's just artificial if you think about it. I mean, all the prices in crypto are artificial. There's no rhyme or reason as to why one thing is so valuable and another one isn't. It's all speculation and market makers and whatever forces you want to put in there that are making that happen. That is not based off of true value and utility.
You said it. I don't know if I could have explained it any other way, the practicality of it. Me as a consumer, and I take payments in crypto, and having the flexibility of using whatever I want. Bitcoin, honestly, I don't even touch because
Mm.
of the complexity of it, or, converting it, selling it, just whatever. To me, other cryptocurrencies are a lot more easier to use, the ease of
Mm.
use. And to me, I like to have ease of use, especially,
Mhm.
if I'm on the store and I want to load something to one of the cards to pay in crypto. Um, it's just a lot easier for me to utilize other type of crypto and not Bitcoin. But do you think like Bitcoin is almost like the Trojan horse or the cryptocurrency that, has just kind of been set up as the one that's going to open the door for another cryptocurrency to come in and be the digital currency of the one digital currency of the world? Do you even think that there's, even though we have options, do you even think that there is going to be one main digital cryptocurrency of the world? I mean, could it be Litecoin? There was another one that I used to discuss, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that name. But what are your thoughts about it?
I really think there shouldn't be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I don't think it's efficient. Um, it's really just its main purpose, if there was one, is for control. There's no other reason for that. I mean, if you think about it, you go back in American history as a perfect example. Like there used to be regional monies. There wasn't, like just one, you know, form of currency in the United States. Like states and all kinds of entities had their own version of
Yeah.
money, and you would exchange between them. And the argument for inefficiency there was because you had a small group of banks who were losing out, making money off of everybody. And so it was, we need to come up with a one federal currency and kill off all the rest of this because for efficiency.
Hmm.
And in reality, that wasn't necessarily the case. The case was more about control and power. Anybody who's ever read, The Creature from Jekyll Island, that's literally documenting what happened. When those bank heads and some members of the federal government got together on an island and came up with the idea for the Federal Reserve, which was an example that actually was already living in Europe. They took that example to create the Federal Reserve and the dollar in America. But before that, like even gold and silver prior to 1873 were both considered what was used to back up money in the United States. It's only after they got rid of silver that it was just gold. And then gold was taken away in 71.
David, you don't think that we might be going down that road in the digital asset arena? And the reason that I say that, we are seeing a lot of institutions coming in, politicians, the government, and
Mhm.
with the Clarity Act, et cetera. You don't think that they might try to push us into that now, seeing that we are able to utilize digital asset, digital currency to cryptocurrency to buy
Yeah, I'm
and
sure they will.
resell?
I'm sure they will. I mean, even now, if you think about it, like you see everybody trying to make stable coins because if you're the creator of the stable coin, you make money off of it, right? If people are
Yeah.
using it, they buy it. So that's why all these banks and other projects are creating their own stable coins. Is because there's money to be made, but at some point, um, control will take over, and they'll always funnel you to one point of control. Right? They allow it to basically hurt itself to a certain point, and
Mhm.
then they go, "Here you go." Right? And so, yeah, it's very possible that that's what happens in the future. How long that takes, I don't know. I mean, some of the things that we've been introduced to have taken decades for us
Yeah.
to accept it, right? So it could be 5 years, could be 50, who knows?
So hopefully not anytime soon. Um,
Yeah.
so what are some developments, or can you tell us of any developments happening around Litecoin right now that we may not know or that we may be overlooking?
I think people are overlooking a project called LitVM. It's the first legitimate layer 2 being built on top of Litecoin. There's a team that have been working hard on that for over a year now, and it's in testnet right now. And the amount of people playing around on their testnet is just absolutely phenomenal. Like the amount of wallets and projects that are messing around with it is so encouraging, and I think it's just not getting out enough yet, but it will be, and it goes live here and just give it another month or two and it'll be live, and you're going to have smart contracts being built on top of Litecoin. You're going to have stable coins being built on top. You're going to have projects that are doing things with real world assets on top of Litecoin. And I mean, think about it. What better type of money or battle tested ledger would you want to have that type of stuff on, other than say Bitcoin or Litecoin, right? And to have basically digital silver backing up what you're doing in your smart contracts and whatever else just makes perfect sense. So I would think that's hasn't gotten its attention yet that it should be. And then the other one would probably be the fact that basic addresses where the totals are hidden and the transactions are hidden on MWeb addresses. And they've been around for 4 years now. We just haven't really done much of a push on it because there's so many other things going on, and the people that really want to use it. And it's been growing steadily over the last 2 years. And I think that's something with privacy being very key, very important, not just now, but in the future, and not just as a marketing ploy, but as an actual, like, this is a thing, privacy is a thing, and we need to take it seriously. So between taking all the things you can do on Ethereum and whatever else, and you can actually build it on top of Litecoin and know that it's going to be safe there, and it's a good, strong foundation to be building on top of, and then know that you also have addresses where you can put your Litecoin in them and hide the totals and hide the amounts that are being sent between MWeb addresses to anybody other than the sender and the user or the receiver is a big deal. So those would be the two that I think kind of stick out the most that should be getting more attention.
Oh, yes. And then you touched on privacy, and, there is growing conversation around privacy regulation and financial freedom. How does Litecoin navigate the balance moving forward?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's optional. The
Mhm.
privacy is optional. It hasn't had any like barriers really. So again, Charlie being so active in everything that we're doing actually went around and spoke to all the major exchanges ahead of time before we instituted this, and just wanted to make sure that hey, look, if we add this optional privacy through these addresses, is this going to cause you to delist Litecoin, or is this going to cause you to not do things with Litecoin? And the answer was no, it's not, because as long as people are actually sending it to the exchange through a regular Litecoin address, whatever they do, prior to that, it's not necessarily a big deal. It's just sending and receiving to those centralized exchanges or whatever through a regular address. That's all they cared about, right? And so the other thing that happened was when Litecoin got MiCA approved in the EU last year, that was a big step forward. And the banks that have added Litecoin to their trading apps in the EU, which is extremely stringent, those banks, they did their due diligence. They had their legal teams looking at Litecoin, and they were contacting myself and anybody else at the team, and we would provide them the information that they needed, including MWeb, for them to know and understand everything about Litecoin before they made a decision, and they still added it. So I don't think everybody's against privacy that are in positions of influence, like people want you to think.
Mhm.
Because companies want privacy too, right? And
Yes.
everybody wants privacy to some level. So it's not like folks that have power are trying to deny you all of this simply because they don't want you to have privacy. There probably are some, yes. I'm not saying there aren't, but there are people that are just towing the line because they don't know any better. And there's some who feel like it probably benefits them and whoever's donating to their campaigns to go against it. But privately, they're not, right? So the good thing is everybody that we've talked to this point who has an understanding of what basic privacy means through cryptocurrency has no problem with MWeb addresses and Litecoin.
Yeah. If someone listening tonight has never used Litecoin before, what would you want them to understand about its purpose and why it still matters today? Like if there's
Yeah,
anybody that's watching trying to get into crypto.
I would go back to sort of like what a lot of us did back in the day, and we would actually send Litecoin to each other, or we would go and talk to companies and try and get them to adopt payments in Litecoin, right? So you'd have videos of people going into their local mall and trying to talk to stores, things like that. It's one of my best examples that I normally use is there was a person that I knew a few years ago who needed some help, some financial help, and I sent them some Litecoin. I tried to send them Bitcoin first, but it was taking forever, and the cost at the time, because the network was fairly congested, it took a lot longer, and that was just the test send. That wasn't even the amount that I was trying to send them, and so then I was like, well, hold on, I got some Litecoin here, and they had to download a wallet that had Litecoin on. And they did, and then once I sent it, like I said, okay, I'm going to send this Litecoin. I'm going to send it right now, and I pressed my thumb on the send, and then I started saying, so as soon as you get, I got it. I was like,
Oh,
okay, yeah, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. How much was the cost of it? And they're like, it's 0.00001, Litecoin. I was like, all right. So then we were pulling out the calculator and we're looking at it and we're like, that's like 1/100th of a cent, right? And they were like, that was freaking amazing. And I was like, that in itself, and this is somebody that was in Australia. There was no Western Union involved. There was no government involved. There was no third party processor involved. It was literally just me to that person. And it literally happened within like a second, right? And so there is no better example than that for why we need cryptocurrencies that are like Litecoin. I'm not going to be some maxi and say it's only Litecoin that can do this, because that's not true, right?
yeah.
But it is proving it can do it now for over like $7 trillion or $8 trillion worth of processing, hundreds of millions of transactions, 14 plus years of all of this happening. And it does it every day. It averages at least around 250 to 300,000 active wallets a day, addresses, right? 250, 300,000 active addresses a day. So it's being used all the time. It averages between 175,000 and 250,000 transactions, right? By the way, those active addresses, sometimes now here lately, that's almost double what Bitcoin's doing on active addresses per day. So this whole thing where it's like when people, you see them online, they're going, is Litecoin even being used? Who even use, is Litecoin around? That's people rage baiting. There's no truth in that, obviously, right? But this is the thing, Litecoiners aren't the ones who are going around creating this large marketing circle of people in a Discord saying, let's all do this at the same, like, these are just people using it because they like using it and it works for them and it's cheap. Why wouldn't you use it, right? That is why it survives all the bear markets. That is why it survives all the garbage that happens, is because the real marketing is literally the utility of it and the dependability of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like, especially if you've been in the crypto space for a while and you
Mm.
dabble into different type of cryptos. If somebody is stuck in a pickle or we're in a pickle and we need to convert that fast, send it fast from one wallet to another, we already know which ones we're going to use and which ones not, which
Yeah.
ones take the most amount of gas fees and which ones will get there, you know, fast.
Yeah. The fact you said gas fees is like, it's very, what's the right, it's not a normal term for me, right? Because it doesn't, you don't, you don't relate
Yeah.
that to Litecoin. There's minor fees, right? There's not gas fees, but
Oh my God.
it's
Way,
so,
what was it? The
the
way,
dynamics are so
way.
different, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that like you can start getting into the argument of proof of work versus proof of stake and what's the benefits and the not, what of each of them. And there's obviously benefits to each, but it depends on the ideals of the person, the things that they believe and what money should look like. Like there's all kinds of different things that go into those arguments, right? But one of them would be the more like proof of stake. One of the things that I feel is like a negative towards it is, and people will argue this with me too, but it's like if the more you own of it, the more say you have of it. Isn't that literally like the existing system we live in that we hate so much? Wouldn't it be more like, okay, you actually are putting in the work? Granted, there's work, I guess, that goes into this too, because you can validate transactions or whatever. But again, it's by how much you own of it that you get to say how much happens on it. Versus here, it's like you got to put in the work and the energy and everything that goes into it. And it's super decentralized. And just because you own more than maybe I do doesn't mean you have any more say in what happens to it than I do. And I think that's beautiful. That's the way it should be, right? Otherwise, you're just back to people like, you know, name off whoever you want, whether it's, Rockefellers or Musk or Trump or whoever, anybody that has a lot of money, right? They literally
Yeah.
carry the influence because they have more of what influences you, right? Whereas with proof of work, that's not what happens. Just because
Mhm.
somebody has 5 million Litecoin versus my 5 Litecoin, they don't have any more say in what happens on the network than what I do.
Yeah.
That's what money should be like, not like this over here. That's just control mechanism. That's all that is. And even the people that have the most of it aren't really in control of it. They just have the most of something somebody else controls. Right. So to me, proof of stake is more leaning towards what I don't like about the current world I live in versus
Mhm.
proof of work. And that's why I live in this house more.
You know, you made such a valid point. Like, you kind of left me thinking there for that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so I do have one last question. I know we're at top of the hour. I do want to ask you another question. And then, do you still have time to do some rapid fire questions with me?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, before we tap into the rapid fire, do you think people that come into crypto looking for money, but end up searching for meaning, belonging, but end up searching for meaning, belonging, or purpose?
Yeah, I think there is because that's what happened to me.
You came for the
I,
money and then,
yeah,
yeah.
I first came in August of 2017 and I had money in the stock market and I thought it was bloated at that time. I didn't want to keep it all in
Mhm.
there and I was like, where else can I put it? And so I dipped my toe into buying my first little bit of Bitcoin. And that's when there was only three of them on Coinbase. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. It was right before Bitcoin Cash got listed. But, and yeah, for me, I just was trying to find someplace else to make more out of my money. But then I started learning about what actually, you know, made those things run and what made them tick. And I was like fascinated by that. And that caused me to start learning more and understanding more and asking questions and things like that. And so that's where I am now. It doesn't mean that I don't, you know, whatever I do have left in crypto that I don't want it to moon because that would be nice for
Yeah.
a couple of reasons, right? I'd like to be able to make life a little bit easier for my wife and my family and stuff, but I also would like to get everybody off my back too about it because it works so well, but my gosh, the amount of people that are in it because it works well is so much less than the amount that are looking for their moon bag right now. It's hard, to not have that come at me every single day, every time we post something or whatever. But Yeah, I believe there's definitely people that get converted over time into the ideals and the intent behind it versus just only making money.
I think so too, because I came searching for that, seeing one of my friends that retired. We worked in the banking industry together, and look at me now. It sucks you in. This space sucks you in. It's like
Mhm.
a rabbit hole. You just go down it and you never come back up. You cannot find your way out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still
So
here.
now we're still here. We're still down that rabbit hole. I'm
Yeah.
going to put some of the comments up so you can see them while we were
Flip.
doing the rapid fire questions. Somebody in the comment, thank you everybody that showed up today. We really appreciate you. And they asked if you like proof of stake. I'm assuming they're talking about the food that you eat, but yes, I like proof of stake. Do you like proof of stake, David?
I love ribeyes. Yes. So I
Oh,
definitely.
absolutely. Okay, let's go with I did gentle rapid fire questions. Are
Sure.
you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Peace or pressure?
What? Peace
Peace
or
or pressure?
oh, peace for sure.
Peace. Faith
Yeah.
or fear?
Always faith. No fear.
Leading or learning?
There's no like gray area in that. It's got to be one or the other.
Or you could select both. Or
I think, yeah, I think the only way to be happy would be to have a mix of both of those. Yeah.
absolutely. Silence or being understood?
Being understood, but yeah, only if it's actually for the right reasons.
What keeps you humble?
Jesus.
What brings you peace today?
Jesus.
What reminds you to keep going?
Jesus.
You know what? We should have raffled something or given away if anybody would have guessed any of these rapid fire questions. David, do you have any parting words of wisdom for us today?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I said the last time somebody asked me that. And it was really just please remember that everybody on this journey are just people, and maybe sometimes they're going down the wrong path. Either it's intentional or it's unintentional, or, especially if someone says something or does something to you out of anger, whether it was deserved or not, just try and understand that normally all behavior in that pattern comes from a place of unhappiness, resentment or bitterness or unforgiveness for something that may have happened to them, and it may not have actually anything to do with you, or they could just be going through a rough day in general. And having grace and mercy for people, and showing them some kindness even when they're not showing it to you, can actually reverse everything that happens for that person for the rest of their day.
I love that. This is the second day in a row that I hear somebody say grace. And I think we don't show grace enough or extend grace to others or extend grace to ourselves. So
Hmm.
thank you, David, for that. And I think that's what stays with us tonight. And
Yeah,
really want to thank and appreciate you for taking time out of your busy life, your busy schedule, and your family to have a human, thoughtful, resilient conversation with us tonight.
absolutely. I'm very honored, and thank you for having me on tonight, Leslie.
It was such a pleasure, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Leslie Mota, and this is David Schwartz. Please follow him. All his social media is in the banner. And if you are not following him, following Litecoin Foundation or Litecoin, what the fudge are you doing with your life?
That's right.
David, again, have a great evening. And remember, everyone, stay unscripted.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, David. Bye, everyone.